The billionaire stood frozen as his 6-year-old son pointed across the marble ballroom, not at any of the elegant women in designer gowns, but at the trembling maid clutching a tray of champagne glasses. In that instant, Adrian Cole realized the most expensive mistake of his life, believing love could be purchased, scheduled, and controlled like everything else in his empire. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The Manhattan skyline glittered behind floor-to-ceiling windows like a kingdom of diamonds, but Adrian Cole saw only his reflection, a 42-year-old man who'd conquered Wall Street yet couldn't get his own son to say, "Good morning." 8 months. That's how long it had been since they'd lowered Catherine into the ground, since the cancer had stolen not just his wife, but the light from his son's eyes. 8 months of Leo's silence, of empty chairs at the dinner table, of a mansion that echoed with everything they couldn't say. Adrian pressed his palm against the glass, his $50,000 watch catching the afternoon light. Below, Manhattan moved with purposeful urgency, deals being made, fortunes shifting, the mechanical perfection of commerce. Up here, in the penthouse that overlooked it all, time had stopped the day Catherine took her last breath. "Mr. Cole," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "your 3 p.m. is here." Dr. Patricia Hernandez entered his office with the confident stride of someone who'd spent 20 years analyzing the wealthy and broken. She settled into the leather chair across from his desk, her eyes already assessing. "How is Leo?" she asked, cutting through pleasantries. "The same." Adrian returned to his desk, a fortress of mahogany and power. "He goes to school, he comes home, he sits in his room, he doesn't speak." "Grief has no timeline, Mr. Cole." "It's been 8 months." His voice hardened with the same edge that made executives tremble in boardrooms. "I've tried everything. Child psychologists, play therapy, that ridiculous art class where he just stares at blank canvases. Nothing works." Dr. Hernandez leaned forward. "What does Leo need that you haven't given him?" The question landed like an accusation. Adrian's jaw tightened. "He has everything. The best schools, the best care, every opportunity." "That's not what I asked." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a helicopter crossed the skyline, its shadow briefly darkening the office. "He needs a mother," Adrian finally said. "He needs family structure, stability, a complete household. He needs time to grieve." "Time?" Adrian stood, packing to the window. "Time is a luxury I can't afford. Every day he stays locked in the silence, he falls further behind. Do you know what happens to children who don't process trauma properly? I've read the studies. I've consulted with 17 different specialists. They all say the same thing: he needs intervention. He needs change." Change isn't the same as replacement. But Adrian had already stopped listening. His mind was moving the way it always did when facing an impossible problem, calculating variables, identifying solutions, building a strategy. Love might be unpredictable, but surely marriage could be approached with logic. Catherine had been his partner, his equal. If he could find someone similar, accomplished, elegant, nurturing, then perhaps the broken pieces of his family could be reassembled. That night, after Dr. Hernandez left with warnings he chose not to hear, Adrian stood in the doorway of Leo's bedroom. His son sat on the floor, surrounded by picture books he didn't read, his small body curled against the leg of his bed. "Leo," Adrian ventured into the room, each step feeling like crossing a minefield. "I was thinking, maybe we could do something special this weekend. Perhaps the aquarium. You used to love the sharks." Leo's dark eyes, Catherine's eyes, flickered toward him then away. The silence was absolute. Adrian knelt beside his son, close enough to see the spray of freckles across his nose, the way his hair fell across his forehead exactly like Catherine's had. "I know you miss Mom. I miss her too, but we can't stay like this forever. We have to find a way forward." Nothing, not even a blink of acknowledgement. That's when Adrian made the decision that would change everything. If conventional approaches had failed, then he'd do what he always did: he'd take control. He'd engineer a solution. Over the next 3 weeks, Adrian Cole transformed into a man on a mission. He compiled a list of potential candidates with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to corporate acquisitions. They had to be successful. He wouldn't consider anyone without significant professional accomplishments. They had to be refined, educated, cultured, capable of navigating his world. And they had to be willing to take on Leo, to become a mother to a grieving child. His attorney looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're essentially holding auditions for a wife." "I'm creating an opportunity for Leo to choose his future," Adrian corrected, reviewing the profiles spread across his desk. "Children need agency. This way, he's part of the process." "And if he doesn't choose anyone?" Adrian's expression hardened. "He will, because I'll make sure every candidate understands what's at stake." The invitations went out on cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. An intimate gathering at the Cole residence. Light refreshments. An opportunity to meet. 23 women accepted: surgeons, attorneys, art curators, venture capitalists. Women who'd built empires of their own and understood the weight of legacy. The night before the gathering, Adrian found himself in Catherine's closet, surrounded by clothes that still held her scent. He ran his fingers along silk and cashmere, remembering how she'd laugh at his terrible fashion sense, how she'd always known exactly what to wear and what to say. "I'm doing this for him," he whispered to the empty room. "You'd understand, you'd want him to have a mother." But the silence that answered felt different from Leo's. This silence accused him, questioned him, made him wonder if he was fixing a problem or running from the real work of grief. He shook off the doubt. Adrian Cole hadn't built a fortune by second-guessing himself. Tomorrow, Leo would choose. Tomorrow, they'd begin to rebuild. Tomorrow, everything would start to make sense again. He just had no idea that tomorrow, his son would choose to destroy everything he'd planned. Anna Reyes had learned to be invisible long before she started working at the Cole mansion. She moved through the marble hallways like a ghost, her footsteps silent on imported Italian tile, her presence so unobtrusive that guests often forgot she was in the room. It was a survival skill she'd perfected over 26 years of life, first in the group homes that raised her, then in the string of cleaning jobs that kept her fed, and finally here in this palace of grief and money. The morning of the gathering, Anna arrived at 5 a.m. as she always did. The mansion was still dark, still quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy with everything unsaid. She changed into her uniform, simple black dress, white apron, hair pulled back in a tight bun, and began her routine. Dust the library, polish the silver, arrange fresh flowers in the grand foyer, make sure every surface gleamed, every detail perfect, so that people who'd never notice her work would live comfortably in a world that appeared to maintain itself. She was on her knees, scrubbing the baseboards in the dining room, when she heard the small voice behind her. "You're here early." Anna turned to find Leo standing in the doorway, wearing dinosaur pajamas and holding the stuffed elephant that never left his side. His dark hair was messy from sleep, his feet bare against the cold marble. "Hey, buddy." Anna sat back on her heels, offering a gentle smile. "Couldn't sleep?" Leo shook his head. Since his mother's death, Anna had learned to read entire conversations in his gestures. This shake meant nightmares. It meant he'd woken up crying and found his father's bedroom door closed, the light off, the message clear. Even grief had business hours in this house. "Come here." Anna patted the floor beside her and Leo crossed the room, settling against her side with the kind of trust that made her heart ache. She wrapped an arm around his small shoulders. "Want to tell me about it?" Another head shake, but he leaned into her warmth, his breathing gradually slowing. They sat like that for a while, Anna's cleaning forgotten. The sunrise beginning to paint the windows gold. This had become their ritual over the past few months. These early morning moments when Leo sought her out, when she became the safe harbor in his storm of loss. "My dad's having a party today," Leo finally whispered, so quiet Anna almost missed it. "I know, a lot of fancy people coming to visit. He says I have to meet them." Leo's fingers twisted in the elephant's worn ear. "He says I have to pick." Anna's chest tightened. She'd overheard enough conversations between Mr. Cole and his staff to know what today was really about. The idea had horrified her from the start, parading women in front of a grieving child like applicants for a job, asking him to choose a replacement for the irreplaceable. But she was just the maid. Her opinions didn't matter, hadn't been asked for, would never be heard. Hey, Anna tilted Leo's chin up so he'd meet her eyes. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, okay? Whatever happens today, you're still you. Your mom is still your mom. Nothing changes that. Promise. Promise. Leo hugged her then, fierce and sudden, and Anna held him like she wished someone had held her when she was a scared 6-year-old in a world that didn't want her. They stayed like that until she heard Mr. Martinez, the head of household, descending the stairs. Then she gently pulled away, standing and smoothing her apron. Go get dressed, buddy. I'll make you pancakes before the party starts. Leo nodded and disappeared back upstairs, taking some of the warmth from the room with him. Anna returned to her scrubbing, her knees aching against the marble, her mind churning with worries she had no right to voice. The day accelerated from there. Caterers arrived with trays of canapés and champagne. Florists transformed the ballroom into something from a fairy tale. Mr. Cole's assistant rushed through with last-minute instructions, her clipboard like a weapon, her tone sharp with stress. And the women began to arrive. Anna watched them from the corners of rooms, from behind serving trays, from the shadows where people like her belonged. They were spectacular, beautiful and brilliant and accomplished. A cardiac surgeon who'd pioneered a new technique, an attorney who'd argued before the Supreme Court, an artist whose installations had shown in the Louvre. Each one more impressive than the last, each one exactly the kind of woman who belonged in Adrian Cole's stratosphere. Champagne, Anna offered, circulating through the ballroom with a tray of crystal flutes. The women took glasses without looking at her, their conversations flowing around her like she was furniture. Anna had learned not to mind. Invisibility had its advantages. She heard everything, saw everything, understood the dynamics that the powerful thought were hidden. She saw how Mr. Cole moved through the room with calculated charm, introducing Leo to each candidate with the precision of a business presentation. She saw how Leo's shoulders hunched with each introduction, how he retreated further into himself with every question about his interests, his school, his future. And she saw something else, a desperation in Mr. Cole's eyes that his expensive suit and practiced smile couldn't quite hide. This wasn't really about Leo at all, she realized. This was about a man who'd lost control of his life and was trying to buy it back. Anna, Mr. Martinez appeared at her elbow, his expression stern. Mr. Cole wants more of the crab cake circulating, and keep your focus on your work, not on the guests. Yes, sir. Anna ducked her head, retreating to the kitchen. But she couldn't stop glancing toward the ballroom, couldn't stop worrying about the small boy who'd sought comfort in her arms just hours ago. She watched through the kitchen doorway as Mr. Cole guided Leo from woman to woman, his hand on his son's shoulder, steering, pushing, controlling. One of the candidates, a venture capitalist named Victoria, knelt to Leo's level, her designer dress pooling on the marble. Your father tells me you like dinosaurs. I actually invested in a museum exhibit last year. Would you like to hear about it? Leo's response was barely audible, and Anna didn't need to hear it to know what he'd said. The same thing he'd said to 17 psychologists, 4 tutors, and countless well-meaning adults. Nothing. Victoria's smile faltered. She stood, brushing off her knees, and turned back to Mr. Cole with apologetic grace. He's a bit shy. He's grieving, Anna whispered to herself in the kitchen, gripping the counter. He's 6 years old and grieving, and no one seems to understand that. The afternoon stretched into evening. The candidates mingled, laughed, performed their rehearsed perfection. And Leo grew smaller and quieter with each passing hour, until Anna couldn't take it anymore. She abandoned her tray and slipped upstairs, knowing she'd probably be fired for leaving her post, not caring. She found Leo exactly where she expected, curled in the reading nook of his mother's old studio, surrounded by Catherine Cole's paintings, his face buried in his elephant. Hey, Anna sat beside him, not touching, just being present. Rough day. Leo nodded into the elephant's fabric. Want to know a secret? Anna waited until he peeked at her. I think all those fancy people are kind of boring. Too much perfume, too many big words, not nearly enough talk about dinosaurs or spaceships or any of the actually important stuff. The corner of Leo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Your mom wouldn't have liked this party, Anna continued, speaking truth she had no permission to voice. I never met her, but I've seen her paintings. I've read the book she left in your room. She was real. She was big-hearted. She wouldn't have wanted you to feel like you had to perform for strangers. Dad says I have to pick someone. Leo's voice was barely a whisper. And what do you think? I think, Leo lifted his head, his eyes shining with tears. I think none of them read bedtime stories right. None of them know that I like my pancakes with the blueberries making a smiley face. None of them know that Thursday nights are for building Lego, or that I'm scared of the dark but too big to admit it, or that Mom used to sing the ABCs when I couldn't sleep. Anna's throat tightened. No, they don't know those things. But you do. The words hung between them, innocent and devastating. Anna looked at this 6-year-old boy, this grieving, lonely child who'd somehow seen past the uniform, past the class divide, past everything that separated their worlds, and felt something crack open in her chest. Leo, she started, not knowing how to explain that life didn't work like he thought it did, that people like her didn't get fairy tale endings, that his father would never in a million years. Anna, Mr. Cole's voice boomed from downstairs. Where's Leo? The moment shattered. Leo's eyes went wide with fear and Anna stood quickly, smoothing her apron with shaking hands. Come on, buddy, we should go back. As they descended the grand staircase together, the maid and the millionaire's son, Anna had no idea that in less than an hour, Leo would speak words that would change all of their lives forever. She only knew that her heart was breaking for this child, and that sometimes the cruelest thing about invisible people was that they saw everything but could change nothing. The ballroom awaited them, golden with chandelier light, full of beautiful people and empty promises. And the choice that would shatter everything was about to begin. The moment Adrian Cole had orchestrated finally arrived, as the sun began its descent behind the Manhattan skyline, painting the ballroom in shades of amber and gold. 23 women stood in an elegant semicircle, their postures perfect, their smiles carefully calibrated between warmth and sophistication. They'd been briefed, prepared, made to understand that this was no ordinary social gathering. This was an audition, an interview, a chance to step into one of the most powerful families in New York. And at the center of it all stood Leo, small and trembling, his hand crushed in his father's grip. Adrian felt the weight of every eye in the room. This was his moment, the culmination of 3 weeks of planning, of careful selection, of engineering the perfect solution to an impossible problem. He'd handpicked these women, each one vetted, qualified, capable. Surely Leo would see what he saw: opportunity, stability, a chance to rebuild. Ladies, Adrian's voice carried the same commanding authority that made shareholders fall in line. Thank you for your patience. As you know, today is about Leo, about giving him agency in choosing who might join our family. The women nodded, their expressions radiating understanding and compassion, practiced, rehearsed, perfect. Leo, Adrian knelt beside his son. Aware of the cameras he'd hired to document this moment, aware of his own mother watching from the corner with barely concealed horror, aware that he was writing a story he couldn't control the ending to. These are all wonderful women. They've agreed to meet you, to get to know you. All you have to do is choose one, just one, the one who feels right. Leo's face had gone pale, his breathing shallow, his fingers twisted in the hem of his shirt, a nervous habit Catherine used to gently correct. Take your time, Adrian encouraged, straightening to his full height. Walk around, ask questions, it's your choice, son. But Leo didn't move. He stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by expectations he couldn't name and pressure he couldn't withstand. The women waited with plastic smiles. The seconds stretched. The silence grew unbearable. Leo, Adrian's tone sharpened with the first edge of frustration. We've talked about this. You need to pick someone. Still nothing. Leo's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape. They passed over the surgeon, the attorney, the curator, the CEO, all these magnificent women offering futures he didn't want. And then his gaze landed on Anna. She was standing against the far wall, half hidden behind a potted ficus, holding an empty champagne tray. The moment their eyes met, Anna shook her head slightly, a warning, a plea, a desperate attempt to redirect him. But Leo had already started walking. The room held its breath. Adrian felt a surge of relief. Finally, movement, progress, a choice being made. He followed his son's path across the marble floor, already trying to identify which woman Leo was approaching. Was it Victoria, the venture capitalist with the warm smile? Or perhaps Emma, the child psychologist who'd seemed particularly attuned to? Leo walked past all of them. He walked past the semicircle of candidates, past the elaborate floral arrangements, past the string quartet that had been playing soft classical music. He walked straight to Anna, wrapped his arms around her waist, and buried his face against her apron. The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian's brain stuttered, unable to process what he was seeing. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't one of the options. This was the maid, the staff, someone so far outside the realm of possibility that he'd never even considered. Leo, his voice came out strangled. What are you doing? Leo didn't let go of Anna. If anything, he held tighter. Anna's face had drained of all color. Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry I would never. Her voice shook with panic and something else Adrian couldn't identify. Leo, come here. Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand reaching for his son's shoulder. This isn't appropriate. Anna is staff. You need to choose from the women I introduced you to. No, the word was so quiet Adrian almost missed it. What did you say? No, louder this time. Leo's face emerged from Anna's apron, his dark eyes blazing with something Adrian hadn't seen in 8 months, defiance. I choose her. I choose Anna. The ballroom erupted in whispers. 23 women exchanged glances ranging from shock to amusement to outrage. Adrian's mother gasped audibly. The string quartet's music faltered and died. And Adrian felt the careful architecture of his plan collapse around him. That's not how this works. He kept his voice low, aware of the audience, aware that this moment would be dissected in Manhattan society circles for months. Anna is our employee. She's not, she can't. Why? Leo pulled away from Anna but stayed planted at her side. Why can't she? Because she's poor, Adrian wanted to say. Because she has no pedigree, no accomplishments, no place in our world. Because I don't even know her last name, her background, anything about her beyond the fact that she scrubs our floors and empties our trash. But looking at his son, really looking at him for the first time in months, Adrian saw something that stopped the words in his throat. Leo was standing differently. His shoulders were back. His chin was up. He looked alive in a way he hadn't since Catherine died. And he was holding Anna's hand like it was a lifeline. Mr. Cole. Anna's voice trembled but held firm. Please, Leo's confused. This is my fault. I should have maintained better boundaries. I'll resign effective immediately. No, Leo's shout echoed off the marble walls. Don't leave, you can't leave. Sweetheart, I have to. She's already my mom when you're not around. The words detonated in the center of the ballroom like a bomb. Adrian staggered back as if physically struck. Around him, he heard gasps, saw phones being pulled out to capture this disaster, felt the weight of judgment from every direction. But all of it faded beneath the ringing in his ears, beneath the terrible truth his son had just spoken. What did you say? Adrian's voice came out broken. Leo's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. She makes me pancakes with smiley faces. She reads me stories when I have bad dreams. She knows all my favorites, my books, my songs, everything Mom used to know. She doesn't make me talk when I don't want to, and she doesn't act like I'm broken. Each sentence landed like an accusation. You're never there, Dad. You're always working or in meetings or on your phone, but Anna is there. Every morning, every night. She's been there the whole time. Adrian's world tilted. Images flashed through his mind. Mornings when he'd left for the office at 5 a.m. and Anna was already there. Nights when he'd worked late and returned to find Leo already in bed, already tended to by someone other than him. The way his son had stopped seeking him out for comfort, for conversation, for anything. He'd thought Leo was pulling away from everyone. But the truth was so much worse. Leo had been finding comfort somewhere else, with someone else, and Adrian had been too blind and too busy to see it. You've been manipulating my son. He turned on Anna, rage flooding in to replace the shock. You've been inserting yourself into his life, making him dependent on you. No, Anna stepped back, her face stricken. I swear to you, I was just trying to help. He was so sad and you were always gone and I just tried to make him feel safe. By replacing his mother. By being a friend, Anna's voice cracked. By noticing him. Do you have any idea how lonely he's been? How many nights he's cried himself to sleep? How many times he stood outside your office door wanting to talk to you but you were too busy? The accusation hung in the air, toxic and true. Adrian opened his mouth to deny it, to defend himself, to reassert control. But he had nothing. No defense. No justification. Just the terrible recognition that his employee, his maid, had done for his son what he'd been too absent to do himself. One of the candidates, Victoria, stepped forward with diplomatic grace. "Perhaps we should give you some privacy, Mr. Cole." "Yes," Adrian's voice sounded distant to his own ears. "Yes, thank you, I apologize for all of this. My driver will take you home." The women filed out with murmured condolences and barely suppressed gossip. The staff scattered. The quartet packed up their instruments. Within minutes, the ballroom emptied, leaving only Adrian, Leo, Anna, and the ruins of the carefully constructed solution. Adrian's mother approached, her face severe. "I told you this was a terrible idea." "Not now, mother." "When then? When you've completely destroyed that boy?" She looked at Leo with heartbreaking tenderness. "Come here, sweetheart. Let's get you something to eat while your father figures out what he's done." But Leo shook his head, staying anchored to Anna's side. "I want Anna." Eleanor Cole's expression softened. She studied Anna, really looked at her perhaps for the first time, and something shifted in her face. "What's your full name, dear?" "Anna Reyes, ma'am." "How old are you?" 26. "And you've been taking care of my grandson." Anna's chin lifted, a flash of pride breaking through the fear. "I've been trying to, yes, someone needed to." The barb hit home. Eleanor glanced at her son, then back at Anna and nodded slowly. "I see." She turned to Adrian. "We'll talk tomorrow, fix this." She left, her heels clicking against marble, leaving the three of them alone in the too large ballroom. Adrian looked at his son, truly looked at him, saw the tear tracks on his cheeks, saw the way he leaned into Anna like she was gravity itself, saw 8 months of grief and loneliness and abandonment written across his small face. "I was trying to help you," Adrian said, his voice breaking. I thought you needed a mother. I thought this would fix everything." "I need you, Dad." Leo's words were simple, devastating. "I needed you and you weren't there. Anna was." The truth of it drove Adrian to his knees. He knelt on the marble floor of his own ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride, and finally, saw what he'd been too blind to see. Love couldn't be engineered. Family couldn't be purchased. And the person who'd been saving his son had been invisible to him precisely because he'd never thought to look below his own eye level, beyond his own class, outside his own expectations of who mattered. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. "I'm so sorry, Leo. I failed you. I failed your mother. I thought being strong meant having all the answers, making all the decisions. But I was just running. I was just so scared." Leo hesitated, then took a tentative step toward his father. "Scared of what?" "Of losing you too, of not being enough, of feeling everything your mother's death meant." Adrian's voice cracked. "It was easier to work, easier to plan, easier to try to control something instead of admitting I was drowning." Anna cleared her throat softly. "Mr. Cole, I should go." "No." Adrian looked up at her, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. Not a maid, not staff, but a young woman who'd shown his son more love and attention than he'd managed in 8 months. "Please, stay. I need to understand what's been happening. I need to understand what I've missed." So Anna stayed, and slowly, haltingly, the truth emerged. She told him about the early mornings when Leo sought her out, about the nightmares and the tears, about the way he'd slowly opened up to her, sharing memories of his mother, processing his grief in the safety of someone who listened without judgment, about the small moments of joy she tried to create, pancake smiley faces, extra time with his favorite books, gentle encouragement to express his feelings. "I never meant to overstep," Anna said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know it wasn't my place, but he was hurting so much and no one was noticing. No one was just being with him." Adrian listened, each word another indictment of his failures. But beneath the shame, something else was growing, a grudging respect for this young woman who'd done what he couldn't, who'd seen his son's pain and responded with exactly what he needed: presence, patience, consistency. Love. What happens now? Leo asked, his voice small. Adrian looked at his son, then at Anna, and realized he'd spent 8 months trying to engineer solutions when what he needed to do was listen, to be present, to let go of control and admit he didn't have all the answers. I don't know, he admitted, but I think we figure it out together, all of us. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't clean or simple or resolved, but it was honest. And in the ruins of his carefully constructed plan, Adrian Cole began to see the possibility of something real. The choice had shattered everything. Now they had to decide what to build from the pieces. The scandal erupted before sunrise. By the time Adrian woke the morning after the disastrous gathering, his phone was flooded with messages. Manhattan's social circles had seized the story with gleeful brutality. Billionaire's son chooses maid over elite candidates. The Cole family humiliated. A 6-year-old's rebellion that exposed the emptiness of wealth. The gossip blogs were worse. They dug up Anna's background within hours: foster care, no college degree, a series of minimum-wage jobs. They contrasted her with the spurned candidates: the surgeon who'd graduated Harvard at 20, the attorney who'd clerked for a Supreme Court justice. The narrative wrote itself. Gold digger manipulates grieving child to secure fortune. Adrian sat in his office, reading the coverage with growing fury. Not at Anna, though part of him wanted to blame her, wanted to find someone other than himself responsible, but at a world that could reduce his son's pain to entertainment. A knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Anna stood in the doorway, wearing street clothes instead of her uniform, a cardboard box in her arms. "I'm clearing out my locker," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I wanted to say goodbye to Leo first, if that's okay." "You're leaving?" "Mr. Cole, I have to. Surely you see that." Anna stepped into the office, setting the box on a chair. "The media is calling me a predator. Your friends are saying I manipulated Leo. Even if none of that's true, my presence here only makes things worse for you and for him." Adrian studied her face, really looked at her, the way he should have months ago. She was younger than he'd realized, her features sharp with the kind of hunger that came from a life with no safety nets. But her eyes held something he recognized: exhaustion, determination, and a protective fierceness that reminded him uncomfortably of Catherine. "What if I asked you to stay?" Anna laughed, bitter and broken. "Why would you do that? I'm the help who overstepped. I'm the reason you're being humiliated in the press. I'm everything wrong with." "You're the person my son trusts." Adrian stood, moving around the desk. "You're the one who saw his pain when I was too blind. You're the one who showed up every single day and gave him what he needed most: someone who cared." "That doesn't change what I am." "And what are you, Anna?" "Poor, uneducated, completely inappropriate for this world." She gestured at the opulent office, the city view, everything his money had built. "I clean toilets for a living, Mr. Cole. I grew up in state custody. I have nothing to offer you or Leo except love, except presence, except everything I failed to give him." Adrian felt the words like broken glass in his throat. "I spent 3 weeks finding accomplished women to audition for my family. I ran background checks, reviewed credentials, calculated compatibility, and I never once thought to look at the person who was already there, already loving my son, already being the stability he needed." Anna's composure cracked. "This isn't a fairy tale. You can't just decide I'm Cinderella and make everything okay. The world doesn't work like that." "I know." And Adrian did know, perhaps for the first time in his privileged life. He understood the weight of barriers he'd never had to face. "But I also know my son. And when Leo chose you, he wasn't confused or manipulated. He was seeing clearly while the rest of us were blind." Before Anna could respond, Leo appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, his face puffy from crying. "You're leaving." His voice broke on the words. "Oh, sweetheart." Anna knelt and Leo ran into her arms. "I have to. I'm causing too many problems." "You're not the problem." Leo pulled back, his face fierce. "They're the problem. All those people saying mean things about you. They don't know you. They don't know that you're kind and funny and you make the best pancakes and you never make me feel stupid for being sad." Adrian watched his son defend Anna with a passion he'd never shown for anything else, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. This wasn't about logic or appropriateness or what society expected. This was about a child who'd lost his mother finding safety with someone who'd never expected to matter. Leo's right, Adrian said quietly. Anna, you're not the problem. I am. I've been the problem since Catherine died. I buried myself in work because grief terrified me. I tried to engineer solutions because I couldn't face the mess of real emotion. And I almost lost my son because I was too proud to admit I was failing. Anna stood slowly, still holding Leo's hand. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't have all the answers. I'm saying I need help. And I'm saying that if you're willing to stay not as staff but as someone important to Leo, someone who's become part of our family, then I want to figure out what that looks like. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I'm not proposing marriage or some instant family transformation, but I'm asking you to consider staying. As Leo's nanny perhaps, or as a family friend, whatever you're comfortable with. Whatever makes sense. The press will destroy me, Anna whispered. The press destroys everyone eventually, but I have lawyers, I have resources, and for the first time in 8 months I have clarity about what actually matters. Adrian looked at his son. Leo needs you and, I think I need to learn from you, about being present, about seeing past my own assumptions, about what real love actually looks like. Silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and risk. Anna looked at Leo, at Adrian, at the box of her belongings sitting on the chair. If I stay, things have to change, she finally said. Not just my job title, everything. Leo needs his father, not just someone filling in for you. He needs you to show up, really show up, not just schedule time with him like a business meeting. I know. And I can't be invisible anymore. If I'm part of this family, even in some small way, you have to actually see me, talk to me, treat me like a person, not furniture. I know that too. Adrian felt the shame of how he'd overlooked her, how he'd benefited from her care without once acknowledging her humanity. I'm sorry, Anna. I'm sorry for treating you as less than. You deserved better. Anna's eyes shimmered with tears. I don't know if this can work. Neither do I, Adrian admitted. But I know what doesn't work, pretending we can plan away grief, engineer away pain, or purchase our way to healing. So maybe we try something different. Maybe we try honesty and presence and figuring it out as we go. Leo tugged on Anna's hand. Please stay, please. And Anna, 26 years old, shaped by abandonment and loss, terrified of hopping for things that had never been meant for people like her, looked at this grieving child and his broken father and made the choice that would change all their lives. Okay, she whispered, I'll stay. The following weeks were harder than any of them expected. The press didn't relent. If anything, the story grew. Maid becomes nanny in billionaire household. Speculation ran wild. Was this really about Leo, or was there something between Anna and Adrian? The hired photographers, the blog posts, the social media dissection of every move they made. Adrian's social circle turned cold. Invitations dried up. Business partners made pointed comments about judgment and appropriateness. His mother, after the initial shock, became Anna's fiercest defender, but even she couldn't stop the whispers. Anna faced the worst of it. Strangers on the street recognized her from photos and made comments. Her email was hacked and filled with vicious messages. Former colleagues from other jobs came out of nowhere to tell stories, some true, most exaggerated, all designed to paint her as someone grasping above her station. But something else was happening too, something the gossip couldn't capture. Adrian began coming home at 5 p.m. Not every day, his business still demanded attention, but most days. He started having dinner with Leo, asking about his day, actually listening to the answers. He hired a grief counselor, not for Leo alone, but for both of them to attend together. And slowly, tentatively, father and son began to find their way back to each other. Anna moved into the guest house on the property, a compromise that gave her privacy while keeping her close to Leo. Her role evolved into something undefined, not quite nanny, not quite family, but something in between. She oversaw Leo's daily routine, yes, but she also pushed Adrian to be more present, challenged his assumptions, refused to let him retreat into work when emotions got hard. You can't control grief, she told him one night after Leo had had a particularly difficult day missing his mother. You can only move through it, be with it, let it be messy and terrible and real. Adrian had learned to listen to her. This young woman who'd grown up with nothing had wisdom about pain that his expensive education had never taught him. Leo bloomed. The silence that had gripped him for 8 months slowly released. He started talking again, not constantly, not without setbacks, but enough. He laughed. He brought home drawings from school. He started sleeping through the night. And on a Tuesday evening in October, 3 months after the disastrous gathering, something remarkable happened. Adrian was helping Leo with homework at the kitchen table, something Catherine used to do, something he'd avoided because the memory hurt too much, when Leo looked up with sudden intensity. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy. I miss Mom." The words, so simple and devastating, hung in the air. Adrian's instinct was to deflect, to soothe, to make the pain go away. But he remembered Anna's words about being with the grief instead of fixing it. "I miss her too," he said, his voice thick, "every single day. But I'm happy again sometimes. Does that mean I'm forgetting her?" Adrian pulled his son close, feeling the weight of him, the warmth. "No, it means you're healing, and that's what she'd want. Mom loved you so much, Leo. She'd want you to laugh and play and be happy. Being happy doesn't mean forgetting. It means you're strong enough to hold both, the missing and the living." Leo was quiet for a moment. "Anna says the same thing." "Anna's pretty smart." "Yeah," Leo paused. "Dad, I know Anna's not Mom. I know she can't replace her." "I know you know that. But is it okay if I love her anyway? Like, in a different way?" Adrian's throat tightened. He thought about all his prejudices, his assumptions about who deserved love and who didn't, who belonged in his world and who was meant to stay invisible. He thought about how wrong he'd been about everything that mattered. "Yes," he said firmly, "it's more than okay. Love doesn't run out, Leo. You can love Mom forever and still love Anna. You can love lots of people. That's what makes us human." Leo hugged him tight. "I love you too, Dad. Even when you were gone all the time, I still loved you." And Adrian wept, finally, freely, releasing 8 months of grief he'd been too afraid to feel. Leo cried with him. They sat at the kitchen table, holding each other, letting the pain and the love and the healing all exist together. Anna found them like that 20 minutes later. She paused in the doorway, started to retreat, but Adrian waved her in. "Stay," he said, "please." So she did. She made hot chocolate, her special recipe with extra marshmallows, and they sat together, the three of them, not trying to replace what was lost but learning to build something new from the pieces. The press eventually moved on to other scandals. The social circle that had rejected them didn't matter as much as Adrian thought it would. His business continued to thrive, turned out. Being more present at home made him sharper in the boardroom, more focused, more human. Anna enrolled in night classes, pursuing the education she'd never had the chance to get. Adrian funded it, though she tried to refuse. "Consider it back pay," he said, "for all the work you did that I never properly valued." She was studying psychology, planning to specialize in childhood trauma. "I want to help kids like Leo," she explained. "Kids like I was, the ones everyone overlooks." Adrian fell in love with her slowly, so slowly he didn't recognize it at first. It wasn't the dramatic passion he'd had with Catherine. It was quieter, built on respect and admiration, and the way she challenged him to be better. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes. The way she stood up to him when he was wrong. The way she loved his son without agenda or expectation. He didn't act on it. The optics were still complicated, the power dynamic still concerning. But he felt it growing and he thought, hoped, she might feel it too. 1 year after the gathering, they held a small ceremony in the mansion's garden. Not a wedding, an adoption. Anna was officially becoming Leo's legal guardian alongside Adrian, a recognition of what had been true for months, that she was family, that her love for Leo was real and permanent and deserving of legal protection. Leo stood between them in his best suit, beaming whiter than Adrian had seen since Catherine's death. A handful of friends attended, the real ones, the ones who'd stood by them through the scandal. Adrian's mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, proud and emotional. The judge signed the papers. Anna's hands shook as she added her signature beside Adrian's. And just like that, the poor foster kid who'd learned to be invisible became legally bound to one of New York's most powerful families. Speech, someone called out. Anna laughed, wiping away tears. I don't know what to say. A year ago, I was scrubbing floors and trying to be invisible. Now I'm standing here as Leo's mom, not replacing anyone but adding to his family. It's terrifying and wonderful and completely surreal. She looked at Adrian and he saw in her eyes everything they hadn't said out loud yet. All the possibility, all the fear, all the hope. Life doesn't always make sense, Anna continued. Sometimes the most important people start out invisible. Sometimes love grows in the shadows, quiet and steady while everyone's looking elsewhere. Sometimes a 6-year-old sees more clearly than all the adults combined. She squeezed Leo's shoulder. Thank you for choosing me, kiddo. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for teaching all of us what really matters. Later, after the guests had left and Leo had fallen asleep exhausted from excitement, Anna and Adrian sat on the terrace overlooking the city. I never thanked you properly, Adrian said quietly. For what? For saving my son. For saving me, really. For refusing to stay invisible when it would have been so much easier. Anna smiled. You know what's funny? I spent my whole life trying to be invisible, trying not to be a burden, not to take up space, not to matter. And then this grieving kid saw me, really saw me, and everything changed. He has good instincts. He does. Anna paused. Adrian, where do we go from here? It was the question he'd been avoiding, the one that made his heart race with a mixture of hope and terror. I don't know, but I know I don't want you to be invisible anymore, not in any way. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. What are you saying? I'm saying I see you, Anna raised. I see your strength and your wisdom and your incredible capacity for love. I see how you've transformed our family. And I see, he took a breath, stepping off the cliff. I see someone I could fall in love with, someone I might already be falling in love with. Anna's breath caught. Adrian. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know the timing is complicated. I know the power dynamics are messy. I know we need to be careful, especially for Leo's sake. But I wanted you to know. I wanted you to be seen. Tears slipped down Anna's cheeks. I see you too. All of you, the brilliant businessman and the broken father and the man learning to be vulnerable. And yes, I'm falling too. It terrifies me. Me too. They sat in the comfortable silence of people learning to be honest with each other, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. There were no easy answers, no guarantees, but there was truth and presence and the slow building of something real. Leo had chosen Anna in a moment of innocent clarity. But now, slowly, carefully, they were all choosing each other, building a family not on expectations or engineering, but on the messy, beautiful work of showing up and being seen. The mansion had been a mausoleum of grief. Now it was filling with laughter again, with life, with the sound of a child who'd found his voice and adults who'd learned to listen. Money had built the walls, but love, quiet, patient, consistent love, was finally making it a home. And in the end, that was the only thing that had ever mattered. What would you have done in Leo's shoes? When the entire world tells you to choose what makes sense, what's appropriate, what fits the expectations, would you have had the courage to choose love instead? This story reminds us that the most important people in our lives aren't always the most obvious ones. They're the ones who show up in the quiet moments, the ones who see our pain when everyone else looks away, the ones who choose presence over perfection, consistency over credentials. Anna didn't have wealth or status or a prestigious degree, but she had something infinitely more valuable. She saw a hurting child and chose to care. And that choice changed everything. If this story made your heart ache for the Annas of the world, the invisible ones, the overlooked ones, the people society dismisses while they quietly change lives, then I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button if you believe love matters more than money. If you believe that sometimes a 6-year-old sees more clearly than all the adults in the room. If you believe that the people cleaning your floors, serving your coffee, and working in the shadows deserve to be seen and valued. Drop a comment below telling me about someone in your life who was there when it mattered most. Someone who didn't have to care, but did anyway. Someone who changed your life by simply showing up. Let's celebrate the Annas of the world together. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because I'm bringing you more stories like this. Stories about real love triumphing over empty expectations, about justice for the overlooked, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stories that remind us what actually matters in this world. We're building a community here of people who refuse to judge by surface appearances. People who know that worth isn't measured in bank accounts. People who believe in looking deeper, caring harder, and fighting for what's right. Your engagement isn't just numbers on a screen. It's how we spread these messages. It's how we remind each other that humanity still exists. It's how we push back against a world that tries to tell us everything can be bought and sold. So if this story moved you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it, post it, talk about it. Let's make sure Anna's story and every story like hers gets heard. Because at the end of the day, we all have a choice. We can look past the invisible people, or we can choose to see them. We can value wealth over character, or we can recognize that the richest lives are built on love, not money. What choice will you make? Drop "I see you" in the comments if you're ready to value the overlooked. Hit subscribe if you want more stories that restore your faith in humanity. And smash that like button if you believe, like Leo did, that sometimes the best choice is the one that makes no sense to anyone else, but makes all the sense in the world to your heart. This is more than entertainment. This is a movement, and I'm so grateful you're here for it. Now go out there and see someone who needs to be seen. You might just change their life and your own.